Welcome back to Scratching the Surface. My name is Justin, aka Money.
And my name is Cody, aka Junes.
And guys, welcome to episode 24. We're almost at that 25 milestone. We got a great franchise, a new movie we're going to be talking about. Definitely excited to get into that with you, Junes. How you been, man?
Been damn good, Money. I'm excited to talk Texas Chainsaw Massacre today. It's been a minute, but
Yep,
episode 24, we keep churning and burning, baby.
we do. And this will be a great movie, start of a franchise, and that is going to be the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the 1974 film, I believe, the original that started it all, the early 70s. This movie's definitely got to tell for having that feel, that melancholy, if you will, Junes.
It really freaking does. I also just think the shot they use with the lens, whatever lens they were using was perfect for this. I think it displayed exactly what you would have in Texas. You have that heat, you have kind of that warm color to the shots. All of that is perfect. It makes it feel like you're right there going through that
Oh yeah.
freaking southern heat with the characters. Grimy, sweaty, dirty. All of that comes into play here with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
And that's how this whole franchise is. Most people have probably seen one of these movies down the road, and without trying to get into spoilers or anything, it's one of those movies where this plot is very simple. Bunch of kids, they go on a trip or they're driving, got to stop for gas. Trouble starts to interfere with their journey a little bit, and things take a turn. And we do meet our, famous massacre killer, Leatherface, and get some really good shots of him. The state of Texas itself, I thought, was shot pretty well in this. And it's a very simple movie, very simple to follow along. Pretty short movie. I think it's like hour and 20 some minutes, so it's not too bad. Um, and yeah, I think we'll see how our scores differ here, Junes. Maybe we'll get the same thing. Maybe we won't. We might be off by a little bit. We'll see. And we will mention Rotten Tomatoes as well. So I'm excited to get into it, Junes.
Yeah, this is going to be a good one. What did you think, Money, going into the first half, especially? We can read the synopsis. I guess you can go ahead with the synopsis, but like you said, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, let's see. When Sally hears that her grandfather's grave may have been vandalized, she and her parab- paraplegic brother Franklin set out with their friends to investigate. After a detour to their family's old farmhouse, they discover a group of crazed, murderous outcasts living next door. As the group is attacked by one of the chainsaw wielding Leatherface, who wears a mask of human skin, the survivors must do everything they can to escape. So, kind of like how I was saying earlier, um, there is some plot twists in this for sure. I think there's a breaking point where, we learn more about the cast and the actual family here, chasing these, or this group of people, and what events unfold. So that is the synopsis. I'm going to read the scores after, and you'll hear our scores too. There will be no table talk, unfortunately, today, but we're glad we're kicking this episode off, which I think would be a banger. So I'm excited to get into this franchise. Junes, before we get into it, what are your just quick thoughts on? I don't know how familiar you are with the entire franchise, but thoughts just on the entire thing. Are you like a probably not a super fan, but would you say you're a fan of it? Kind of not nitpicking too much, but
I would say overall, I'm a decent fan of it. I remember when it came out in the 2000s with one of their remakes. Can't remember if
right.
it was a direct sequel or what it was, but I do remember watching that growing up and being pretty darn scared. But I never really got around to the original until a couple years ago. And when I watched the original for the first time, I was like, wow, this is actually really freaking well done. I
Yeah.
think the other ones pale in comparison that have came after it. They just did it so well with the original. Everything is so moody and just so perfect for this type of film. And they don't hold back on a lot of things. Yes, there's a little bit of lackluster effects that they have here in 1974 with this film, but I think just the overall grunginess of the film is
Yeah.
enough to show through for the audience. But I would say the only thing that is lacking is some of the more good practical effects you typically see from something maybe that came out later in the 80s or later in the 90s. But they certainly do a good job with this one. And after watching I was hooked watching those first opening scenes
Dude.
before the intro credits. When I first watched this, I was like, holy crap, this is really goddamn scary. It really grabs your attention and instills fear into you as the audience.
Yeah, yeah, for a 70s film, it gets you, and I can only imagine the fear set in back then before everything we have now, obviously. So, probably would have been a time to be alive when this came out. Not only to mention, as we're kind of getting into it now, based on real life events. Obviously, you probably already knew that, but there was a massacre in 1974. This was a real thing. And I believe it's still not completely solved. Probably will never be. But events like this did take place, hence the movie, hence the franchise, things of that nature. So it alone, that makes it just more, it makes me more invested for sure.
There's something about that adds a level of scariness, knowing that it really actually happened to real life people. And the 70s, we've talked about it, I think specifically on our Friday the 13th episode, number 19. Go watch that if you haven't yet. That was a fun one. But this was a weird period, man. And there were some just strange people running around this freaking country. And we see that immediately in our opening scenes with them riding in the van together, our main characters coming across a strange character, a hitchhiker. And these are the type of people that you see in the 70s. And you're thinking to yourself, what a freaking weirdo. But at this time in the 70s, money, people were trusting maybe to an extent more than they should have been of people.
100%. I think, 70s hippie era, like everyone's wanting to get picked up. More people were walking around. Like, I think people were more friendly, but not with enough caution for sure. Kind of like you mentioned. But that first scene we get, that high pitched camera noise flashing through some dead bodies in that opening scene, that just, I don't know if it's the old camera sound, but I don't know if it's like the turning of the shutter with the flash, and that just like high pitched noise was so good. It is a rewatch for me. I forgot to mention that, but I did forget about how that opens up, and it gets you invested, brings back a lot of nostalgia. I love that, how it opens up with that. We see that throughout the entire franchise. It's iconic to this franchise and movie. So that was great. And yeah, I can mention some of the characters. The group we have is pretty simple. We have Sally, one of the main characters, played by Marilyn Burns. Jerry, played by Alan Dazinger. Kirk, played by William Vale. The old man who we see like at the gas station and later on, Jim Cedow. The hitchhiker, Edwin Neal. Franklin, Paul A. Partain. And we have Pam, one of the other females, Terry McMinn, and Leatherface himself in this movie, played by Gunnar Hansen. And there's probably a few others, but I'm not going to mention them. That's like the core cast of this film. And the first act, yeah, we see them driving. We, get a dialogue from a lot of people. And I would say, I don't know if you'd agree, but I think Franklin was just huge in this first half. There's so much dialogue with him compared to anyone else, from conversations in the van to the gas station when they pick up the hitchhiker, things like that. And I think that's kind of how this first act went on. And it was just so simple. You got to see that 70s era, the state of Texas. What did you think of the first act a little bit? Anything stick out to you at all? I mean, I know it's pretty simple, but yeah.
I had a lot of fun really when they do pick up the hitchhiker and they're having just kind of open conversation. And as that conversation keeps going on, you're thinking more to yourself, okay, this guy's probably a danger to these people. I think there's a point too when he takes a picture. This guy's got a camera, by the way, when they pick him up, the hitchhiker. So when I see the camera and I see those initial shots with the pictures of desecrated graves and dead bodies and bones, I'm thinking maybe this guy had something to do with those. I don't know. I saw a camera. he was holding it in the van, and a lot of that dialogue is really good. And I tell you what, Franklin is kind of a funny character. Some of his lines I'm actually laughing out loud at. And
Yeah.
there's a point where Kirk says to Franklin, he's like, "You're just as weird as that guy, man. You're just as weird as
Yep.
that hitchhiker." And I mean, Franklin does say some weird shit. He's talking about when they drive by a slaughterhouse for cows. He's talking about the process of killing cows and putting them down. It's all kind of more detailed than some of the ladies in the van needed to hear. He's just a funny character, and I would say that's the moment that really sticks out to me the most in the first act for sure is when they're having that open dialogue and we're getting introduced to the setting that we're going to be in here for the movie. It's a lot of fun, and that hitchhiker, man, there's nothing like it when he pulls out the knife and actually threatens to cut somebody. That's when you put your guard up and they kick him out of that van, and we wonder if we'll see him again.
Yeah, they're worried about if they're or if he's going to follow them, and I don't know if it was Terry. I think it was Terry reading about the signs and the astrology and like, oh, like he's this and he might do this based on like personality and all of that, which was kind of funny to me. And they talk a lot about it in like the first half. But yeah, like to me, it's so simple, it's so easy to understand, and it makes me more invested in that. A lot of times alone is better in some of these horror movies alone than trying to overcomplicate things and have a million things going on at once, because you're almost sitting there in the van living with them and
Mm-hmm.
experiencing that with them. And yeah, I agree. Like Franklin definitely to me stood out, uh, and just that whole hitchhiker scene too, which I want to say lasted like 10, 15 minutes almost of him doing those things, took the picture, cut Franklin. But before that, just straight up like takes his knife like right out of his hand, like no hesitation. And then his like stutter, you could tell he's kind of like mentally something's going on, like
Yes.
he's a different kind of guy. And they're starting to regret it. So that was a fun scene. Not to mention like the bag he had, what kind of animal that was made out of. Did you notice that?
I noticed it too. Just very strange, dude. Weirdo, weirdo. So once we get him out of the van, I'm like, thank God, because these guys, you should not
Yeah.
be sticking around this kind of dude. I don't care if he needs a ride or not. Get the fucker out of
No.
the van.
Cutting himself up and Franklin taking pictures. It's just like so weird. But hey, probably in the 70s, you're picking up hitchhikers, shit like that's probably going to
Well,
happen. So, I think they've done it before because I think, Jerry, the driver, so like the most 70s character in this
he really
movie with
is.
the hair and outfit. Like, he's like at one point turns around when they kick him out. That's the last hitchhiker I'm ever picking up or something. So they're kind of used to it, I feel like. But yeah, I definitely wouldn't be doing it again. So
Mm-mm.
they end up getting to the gas station and they meet the old man and another guy that's like washing their car going
Okay,
like
that guy's
back and
hilarious.
forth. That was hilarious. I love that.
Weird looking dude. He's got a big ass forehead,
Didn't
giant
know
forehead.
didn't know when to stop. He like every time the old man would walk back, just starts washing the car, then goes back, washes it again. So just like little details like that, it's just funny. Little to know they were in on the kidnappings and killings and being a part of the family itself later on that we find out. So probably the most common, or not the most common, a common issue, running out of gas back in the
Mm-hmm.
70s, much simpler times. So they end up, trying to figure out where they can get some gas. They hear about this old place back down the road off, take a turn this direction, and it's a house nearby or a gas station nearby where they can get some help. And they discover this house. This house is so cool. And Franklin's just so pissed off. He obviously, being a paraplegic, can't do anything really. The terrain there just looks horrible. I felt bad for him. He's trying to wheel himself around, and he's like, like spitting, throwing a tantrum while the everyone else is having fun discovering the house. And I think Kirk and Pam try to, have some fun. They hear about a water hole, something trying to go swimming, and it's all dried up now, obviously. But just these characters kind of just having some freedom a little bit for the first time in this movie. We've seen them bunched up together for the entire part of the movie so far. And everyone kind of starts splitting off, and this is where things get a little hairy.
Mhm.
And again, Franklin's just so pissed off. He's just roaming around doing his own thing, can't get anywhere really, and throwing this hilarious tantrum, which I thought was just so funny.
Well, yeah, let's talk about the relationships we got going on here because we've got
Yeah,
Jerry with Pam and Kirk, or sorry, Kirk and Pam, and then Jerry is with Sally. And then we have the odd man out, Franklin, who is the brother of Sally. He is obviously very annoyed that he had to come along on this trip, especially once they get to the house and the couples are kind of flirting around, making out, all that stupid shit. And like you said, he's so annoyed by all of it. I did feel bad for him. Like I said, just the terrain is not good for a dude in a wheelchair at all. I mean, he couldn't
no,
go anywhere. I think the entire film until the back half, he was just sitting there at the van. So he couldn't really do a whole lot. But I love the look of that house. I mean, the overgrowth of the trees and the vines, the foliage, it's just you can't see anything. It's all shrouded by plant life. And inside the house, it's just perfect too. It's kind of dark. All the wallpaper is just ripped off. It's just kind of a spooky house. And I just kind of enjoyed those scenes of our main characters walking around, checking out the rooms. It is a very spooky place. And then we have Franklin at the front door of that house. He notices some voodoo shit. And once you see the voodoo stuff at that front door, that's when you're like, okay, this could be a very dangerous area. I don't know if it's specifically at this house they're in at the moment, or if it's just on the land near them, but something is weird and not right in this area when you're seeing voodoo stuff.
no, yeah, and he learns that quickly, and the other characters start to notice things like that too. I think shortly after I think this is like the only part I was kind of confused. I think they find another house or something because Kirk hears a generator running or a motor. Doesn't know what it is, but they need gas. And when you hear a running motor, guess who's going to have gas or diesel, whatever they obviously the van's going to take gas, but they get curious and they stumble upon it. They get to the front door, and I think Pam is, sitting there. They find a tooth on the ground, just simple little shit like that. And then she kind of goes off on this little swing set nearby. And Kirk's like just pounding on the door and it just kind of opens by itself. And here he walks in, calling for help, seeing if anybody's home. And boom, right in your face, Leatherface, the first ever shot we get of him. So we could talk a little bit about him. What did you think of his aesthetic, Junes? Because it changes a few times throughout the film.
Yeah,
So
I kind of like his aesthetic overall. He's a big burly dude. You can tell. I mean, this is someone
very
that
burly.
even for an average build male, you're probably going to get your ass kicked. I mean, once he
Yeah.
grabs a hold of you, he's just such a big body. You can't get away from him. And the overall aesthetic of the mask, you can just I love how you can see the skin of the mask being a little bit aged. It's probably a little hard by this point. And I love that you can see the eyes and the teeth. His teeth are pretty jacked up. And when you see him yelling, he's like I love the look
Yeah.
of his teeth being fucked up. And then obviously wearing the apron's perfect too, or the
Yeah.
butchering apron, I could call it. So his aesthetic it's so scary. If you run into that, you're shitting your pants. I mean, this is a tough villain to try to go up against. He's very unforgiving.
Yeah. And he knocks Kirk to the ground with one blow and he's squirming. And it's like, it's how Franklin's describing the slaughterhouse. He's like, sometimes it takes two or three blows to that, cow or whatever, or pig, and they're still squirming. And you saw that with Kirk, and he gives a few more blows, drags him off. And then that door just freaking slammed. I'm like, yup, here we go. Let's go. And it's so iconic to the franchise, obviously, but I feel like anybody that's seen this movie or seen or in a similar scene in another movie just knows that feeling I'm trying to describe. So it's definitely it's like it gets your adrenaline just going a little bit and you're like, oh, he's just in his lair now. He's got Kirk. What else is going to happen here? So I freaking love that.
I love these types of scenes because it's not just the goriness, it's not just the brutality of it. It's also how would I react in this situation realistically?
Yeah.
Because when Kirk when he's there, it's a split reaction. You only have a couple seconds at most to make a reaction. And when he sees him, he kind of stumbles kind of forward near him.
Hmm.
And there was nothing he could do. I mean, that was coming down on his head before he knew it. And obviously there's nothing you can do. So I like these
Yeah.
types of scenes. I'm like, how the fuck would I react? I'd probably be fucked too.
Yeah.
And it's the squirming, all of that feels very realistic and very disturbing. And it's seeing that it definitely is effective. So that intro, that first kill that Leatherface gets is Chef's kiss, and a very, very iconic scene.
And our next victim, being Pam, comes in from outside, wondering where, her boyfriend Kirk's at, whatever. And she stumbles into this room full of freaking chicken feathers and bones, and the chickens literally in cages. And I feel like they drag it out a little too long, but they're showing everything in the room, kind of like how satanic it is with the bones, the furniture. The framework is like a human skeleton. It's almost like shrine-esque, if you will. And they kind of drag it out, but she falls victim of Leatherface too. She starts screaming. He chases, short chase scene with her, and ends up hanging her on that hook. And my God, I feel like that'd be the most. I definitely think it's one of the most brutal things I've seen in a horror movie, being hung up on a slaughter hook. In the back too. Like, oh, I always see that and I'm like, God, I could only imagine how that'd feel.
It's so bad because you're alive. Like you would
Yeah,
feel all of
that's the worst
that.
part.
It'd be a slow death probably too, and the gravity pulling you down, yet you are set on this giant ass slaughter hook. Oh,
Yeah,
it's just it would just be slowly digging through your tissue, through your organs. Just crazy stuff, man. And it's
yeah,
oh man, and they didn't waste any time after Kirk's kill. She was immediately after that,
pretty
and
much.
and an example of his brutish nature, his big body. When he grabs Pam, she's helpless, man. She can't do anything. Her fate is sealed the moment he grabs a hold of her, and she sees Kirk getting. So this is, I will say, where the Texas Chainsaw Massacre could have maybe made this even better if the practical effects were more on display in this
Oh
scene.
yeah,
You saw more blood. When she got set on the hook, there really wasn't any noise. I was expecting more of like like a ripping through tissue noise when she gets set on that. Maybe see a little bit of the gore. Maybe the practical effects were limited at that time. Maybe they just didn't want to show that much gore. But that's the one complaint I maybe had with that moment. And then of course when he's sawing up Kirk, not that we needed to see the blood, that we needed to see whatever was getting chopped off, but
yeah,
I wouldn't have minded it. I would not have been against it.
yeah. There's definitely some off-screen stuff that happens, and like when she gets hung up, it like cuts right to her face, and it's just a still shot of her. I think it's a pretty famous shot, but like her agony, her in her face, and her just trying to grab that hook and kind of inch herself up.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of off screen stuff. I definitely agree with you. It pans off, and I think we kind of get brought back to Franklin now. I'm not sure exactly what happens next, but the sun's starting to set. We have Franklin, Jerry, and Sally left as of now, and Jerry goes off, and we get great shots of this countryside, farmland, whatever you want to call it, just the property that they're on and the trails that we see. And we have Jerry going off while Franklin and Sally are trying to watch the vehicle, obviously. Not to mention the key, they didn't even have the keys the whole time, which kind of pissed me off a little bit later. But Jerry goes off and he falls victim too. Like, it's literally them walking through the door right into his presence. And he's I like how that room also, like his lair, if you will, or his slaughterhouse, is like right by the front door, almost like you walk probably 15 feet and then that metal sliding door with that room is right there. So you see it as soon as you walk in, and it seems like it's a magnet for these characters that fall victim to him. And Jerry, I'm trying to remember exactly how he gets caught up with him, but he basically walks kind of down in there, and we see him walk into that room and you hear a banging on that freezer and you hear screams or something and it spikes his curiosity and you see Pam's like half frozen body shoot up and Leatherface is right there to get Jerry too. So that was pretty cool. I did forget about that scene. I forgot about how she got locked up in there or put in there. She wasn't really locked up, but she yeah, and he freaking grabs him and kills him. But that is also another scene in another movie where it's not the first time we see a body in a freezer like that. So I thought that was pretty cool how, they brought it back later, but originally it was in this movie. So great scene because we did see more of that room. I know we saw it with Kirk earlier, but that room, man, it's just like so it's just like a little kitchen area, just like his little like playtime area. Like you know what I mean?
Well,
It's just
we'll talk about this actually with the character of Leatherface personality wise, but I will second you on that moment with the kill that we had on Jerry. Great scenes and the idea of her Pam being in shock, but she basically went into shock after everything that's happened to her, but yet she's
yeah.
still alive and she's in a fucking freezer, dude. How horrible is that? She's still alive there for a second too, because she like you said, she's banging on the door, not fully aware of everything, but she is technically still alive in that freaking freezer. So that's crazy to see,
Yeah.
and just it's so hard to think about what that would be like. And that's for the audience. What really strikes home is seeing characters go through just terrible things like this, and wondering what the fuck that'd be like.
So just to go off that very quickly, it makes you wonder because there is a lot of cannibalism in this franchise. It makes, so he puts a body in the freezer, he demolishes Kirk, dissembles him, and then he just rips up Jerry. It makes you wonder what he does to
Mhm.
these bodies. He hung up Pam. Is he saving her for later? Is he going to like experiment on her? And then she's in a freezer, so obviously he's trying to like keep her solid, frozen, saved up for later. So just shit like that, it makes you wonder like what are his plans? Like you just never know what he's going to do with these bodies. Obviously they're dead, like gonna be dead, but like almost it's like how is he going to play with them? What's he going to do? How is he going to just torture the shit out of these people? What is he going to do with their bodies? Things like that. So to me, that's that gear turning in my head. Like, how is that gonna play out? Like, what are his true plans behind some of these bodies that he's capturing or killing? So, just makes you wonder. All the more just grotesque to his character. So,
I could definitely see Leatherface being kind of a necrophiliac and being somebody that is going beyond just the interest in the bones and the muscles and all that. I could see them actually turning to cannibalism as well. We can see they've been doing this. Leatherface has been doing this for years. We saw the cars at this little cottage when Kirk was walking through that were clearly being hidden. So they've been doing this for years. To what extent have they taken it? How far have they gone in terms of doing cannibalistic acts? We don't know, but it's certainly a possibility, and it's crazy to freaking think about that.
yeah, it really is. And we finally get back again to Franklin and Sally, who are now left alone. It's pitch dark at this point, basically, and the full moon out, and they start disputing on whether to stay or leave or one person go. Franklin doesn't want to give up the flashlight, so they bitch and argue, and they eventually just both go, which I think was smart. And we learned they didn't even have the keys, so it makes sense just for both of them to go. And poor Sally pushing him around. That looked horrible. And he's like, go faster, go faster. It's like, dude, shut up. He's a pretty big dude, too. Sally's like 110 pounds of skin and bone pushing him around. And I thought that was kind of funny. But they, I think they end up again rolling up to the property, no, I retract that. I think they're like on one of the trails. They get intercepted by Leatherface, and he rips up Franklin bad. I
Yep.
mean, the dude literally, it's a free kill. Let's be honest. It's a free kill. So,
You're right. It is a free
I
kill.
mean, yeah, go ahead.
That was sorry, that was good, but like, that's really good. It was a free kill for Leatherface. Franklin, poor Franklin. There wasn't a whole lot he could do. He was on a trip he didn't want to be on the whole time. He was worried about everything. He's like, we should get out of here. We gotta go. And
Yeah.
that poor man just got put into a terrible situation because of his big sis. Sally, I'm very disappointed in you. Good kill, great kill, and I love the shot of the moon. I love the wide,
Hmm.
extreme shots we get in general of this piece of land we're on. The
Yeah.
sunset as well when Jerry is walking to his death. I love the look of all that. The aesthetic is great. The sunset bleeding into the picture is really good. Like I said earlier, it makes you feel like you're there. The sweatiness, the griminess, the dirtiness, that's all very, very well done. Definitely executed.
Yeah. Definitely a part of the state, the slaughterhouse, the
Mhm.
aura of that property, 100%. So, we have what I think might be the longest chase scene I've ever seen with Sally and Leatherface. They end up circling the property, I swear to God, like 3 times in and out of the house. She ends up jumping through the top story window. Again, circles back to the property. And she ends up just getting captured and tied up. And we see the old man in on it. Or no, sorry. She ends up going to the gas station. Oh my gosh, I almost forgot. She goes to the gas station. The old man's playing innocent. He's in on it the whole time. Drives her to the property. And she thought she was safe. Plot twist. Nope. And he drives her back in his truck and they're at the property. She's tied up. And now we see the hitchhiker as well in on it. And some pretty fucked up shit with their grandfather, who must get entered. There's a sadistic evilness behind it. The dude literally looks rotten, but is technically alive in this. Don't know how, but it's almost like a ritualistic thing. You give him blood, he comes back, he starts moving, he gets energy from it. So they cut up Sally's finger, he sucks on it. It's so freaking weird. And that family, it puts a mark, even a bigger mark on the family of how you think of them. And it's worse than
Mhm.
what you already had thought previously. But you see the old man, the hitchhiker, Leatherface, they're all having dinner and pretty good dinner scene. A lot of screaming from Sally. I think that was a little bit too much, but I think they could have switched up the dialogue a little bit, maybe dove into a deeper meaning for the movie, maybe figured out a little bit more actually about these characters, what they do, why they do it. It's just a lot of bitching almost between the family. It's almost like just there's like a mental warfare going on. And because you hear the hitchhiker telling the old man, you're just a cook, you don't do anything. And he doesn't want to be a part of the killing. And Leatherface and him are the true masterminds. And what did you think of all this? I know it's a lot. I'm saying a lot, but yeah.
Yeah, the back half, unfortunately, is where I started to slide a little bit in terms of attention span. Not that I have a great attention span, anyways, but I did start losing a little focus because this scene specifically, and then the chase scene with Sally is prolonged, longer than we needed it to be. They could have cut it down by 10 or 15 minutes, if I'm being honest. But I enjoy them. It's certainly freaking weird to see this goofy family going back and forth. It obviously adds to the amount of just strangeness that this film does have at times. But
Mhm.
that's part of the film that I do like. It is strange. It's weird. It's some of these people that you see in life, just some goddamn weirdos, some just bad actors in life. So I like to see some of that. But I agree. I think it would have been cool to see some more background on how they do the killings. All of that would have been kind of cool to hear instead of them just kind of bitching and moaning. But I do kind of like to
Right.
see that Leatherface clearly is also someone that's just highly disturbed, and I can see why he's doing this stuff. There was even a scene after he killed one of the protagonists earlier on where he's noticeably distraught. He's very worried. He's very nervous. Clearly, this guy is someone that has issues mentally and probably doesn't really know the bad things he's doing until after the fact, where he starts to have that guilt come on to him. So a lot of those scenes are very disturbing, of course, but could have been cut down.
Yeah, and I agree. And they, it was cool because yeah, we got to see the property more. We got to see the house. We get introduced to the grandfather and the other skeletal person up there. Makes you wonder who that is a little bit. So just things like that. Like I think it was kind of necessary, but I wish they would have, yeah, just did some things in some different ways.
Like
Is all.
how long do you think those bodies were up there? That was a great scene when Sally sees those bodies upstairs. I mean, how
Dude,
long? Give me a number.
like literally, it could have been a decade. I
Jesus
think,
Christ.
like a
It could
whole
have been.
decade. By all the other crap in that house, like they mentioned too, how they in the slaughterhouse, they boil the the bodies down so everything falls off the bone, and then you just have the bone. So like, who knows how long shit has been laying around in that house? I literally could be a decade
It could be a
easily,
decade. It's
easily.
oh boy. And to what extreme, to what level are they taking things? It really makes you
Yeah,
wonder. And that's why I'm okay with seeing the bits and pieces, all the nooks and crannies of the house, because I want to kind of see what these weirdos have been up to, man. It's such a bizarre thing, and I do kind of like seeing that. So I'm okay with it. I'm okay with
yeah,
it, money.
yeah. And we see them trying to get the grandfather in on trying to kill Sally. Like, oh, he was the best killer back in the day, and he's moving around, and Leatherface is assisting his hand with that sledgehammer. Just keeps falling. And it was kind of like an awkward scene. I'm like, are they gonna get on with this? Like, what's gonna happen? I knew the whole time. I knew the plot of the story. Like, Sally lives. I already knew that, but she ends up getting it getting hit a few times and escaping then because the hitchhiker's just holding her down. Well, the dude's holding her for like 3 minutes while he's just like missing his blows, and she ends up running, getting away. And it's now daytime, so like the whole like the which to me that time scale does not make sense at all
I do kind
because
of agree.
the sun was going down when Jerry died, but we don't know how long Franklin and Sally waited at the van. So it had to have been like early morning, something. I don't know. And it makes you wonder how long they were in that house for. But she jumps out and it's boom, daytime, like right in your face. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that too. Um, and she's running down that long driveway, and she gets out to the road. Hitchhiker's right on her ass, cutting her back up with his freaking little knives that he loves, that weirdo. And Leatherface gets a chainsaw. He's tailing. He's a little bit back further, gassing the hell out of that thing like he always does. And just out of nowhere does that hitchhiker just get blown up by that truck. So I love that's probably my favorite scene in this. They get out to the road and there's just this semi coming down, and they're both standing in the middle, kind of fighting. She's obviously trying to get away. She split second gets out of the way, kind of pushes him, creates some separation, and boom, you see that obviously like dummy body just get wrecked by that semi. And that's probably like one of my favorite scenes because to me it is a satisfying kill. That dude just his aura, his character is so freaking weird, and it's almost kind of satisfying when you have that protagonist die for all the shit he did and caused a little bit. I mean, he initiated almost everything. I mean, he was the hitchhiker they picked up, and that was when the weird shit started happening. So, uh, what did you think of that scene, June? It's pretty monumental to the movie.
Yeah.
It's like, it's because it's, imagine seeing it for the first time and it's like, holy shit, like that. Like, you don't see that a lot in movies. Like, just completely blown up by a truck, just ran over, obliterated.
Well, it's such a chaotic few scenes with the chase that you're so keyed in on what's
Yeah.
happening between the two characters that you completely forget about that they're on a highway, that there could be a car coming by. And when he does get hit, it's like, holy shit, that scared the crap out of me. And then you're like, wow, that was actually a really satisfying kill. I'm glad to see that fucker go. That's great. That's great. And then we have the moment right after that with Leatherface chasing her in the back of a truck. He's wielding the chainsaw. He obviously is very upset she got away, but God, I think it's a fun way to end the film for sure. And Sally, she lives to see another day. I'm happy for her.
Well, and don't forget too the involvement with that truck driver, throwing the wrench at him. He ends up cutting his leg a little bit at the end
Mhm.
there. The chainsaw falls on his thigh, so he's a little bit hurt. Barely gets in that truck and escapes. So it was pretty damn satisfying to see her get out of there
She
and be a fighter for
barely,
it. Yeah, barely,
barely
literally.
got away just by
But
the grace of
yeah,
God.
the scene that you just mentioned, it's like it's so okay, I would probably say this is my favorite, but at the end, it's so cinematic
Hmm.
to me when he is. You could tell he can't really speak. There, Leatherface is mentally troubled. Like he's just waving that thing in the air, almost dancing with it. And to me, it's so cinematic. And you know that there's going to be a second one coming out. She escapes. Back then, you probably knew. Um, but yeah, and it's almost like they put a filter on the camera or something because it's so orange and glowy in the sunrise, and it's just him. And he's in a different costume now. His aesthetic's different. His mask has changed. He's got like makeup on it. He's in like a different suit. And it's just he's waving that thing in the air. Like it's so cinematic. I love that. So and yeah, she gets away. It kind of just pans off, I think, or something like that, and the movie ends. Roll the credits. So uh Sally coming up in some other films for sure. So yeah, so I freaking love how it ended is what I'm saying. So
It's a cinematic scene, like you said. Is this my favorite film of all time? No, but can I just admit the fact that there are some top five moments in this movie? Abso-freaking-lutely,
yeah.
so cinematic. You can't help but think of that. One of the first things that does come to your mind is, I think, the first kill for me is Kirk, and then that last scene with Leatherface. It's so memorable. It sticks with you, and the fact that this is a 1974 film and is still holding up today beautifully. Oh, you can't help but just admire the art of this genre. Beautifully done. Just a fun
Yeah.
freaking film to revisit.
Yes. So we're gonna get into these scores now, and I'm excited to hear what you got to say, Junes. I'm gonna start with Rotten Tomatoes. They have an audience score of 82%. Pretty freaking fair. And they have a critic score of 89%. So usually I feel like with some of these classical movies, maybe the first in a franchise, something, usually the critic score is higher. I tend to notice, which really isn't surprising. But I can go first. It doesn't, I'll initiate it. To me, I mean, yeah, the first in the franchise, amazing. The best there is in the franchise. If I had to rate any other movie in this franchise, it's going to be lower than what I'm about to give. Um, but to me, it's the start of something in the early 70s based on real life events that just gets you so invested and hung up on what actually happens. And when you have a movie partake in remaking those events is so brutal and so scary. I always try to picture myself in a movie theater or a drive-in theater watching this and then having to go home. Like imagine you're in Texas watching this. Like it'd be so terrifying. But to the characters we get, the aesthetic of Leatherface, to the simplicity of a good horror movie just always boosts my score. Um, Very easy to follow. It's a Kickstarter to something I think is great overall. I know there's hard critics of this franchise. And some of the movies, yes, progressively get worse. There's some, and then there's some that kind of boost the morale, some that kind of decrease the morale. But so it's a little wavy. It's not as consistent, but even to me, but and a lot of other people. I love this first film. There's just something about it. It always brings you back home again to why you fell in love with something or a character. This is a slasher franchise, which I love. So all of that being said, I'm going an 8.9 on it.
Ooh. Would you
So I
go for The Conjuring again? You're
it's
running
it's got to be similar. I don't have it
very
pulled up, but
close. Eight,
Yeah.
nine,
I
eight,
don't know if I
nine.
gave that a 9 something. I
Yeah.
think it might have been above a 9. So, and again, this is one of those films. Scores are based off, the setting they're in, the aesthetic, how the killer is, this franchise, Texas is its state. So, like, if you're into that Western kind of feel, hey, you're going to love it. To me, it's not necessarily based on all of that. It's a lot of other things, but like you have Halloween that takes place in Haddonfield, Illinois. Like that's a little suburban city feel. This is like, hey, out in the butt fucking crack of nowhere. Like, so if you're into that in that Western Texas field and just the setting, the colors you get, the killer, the like, so it's just all of that. So the gruesomeness, a slaughterhouse feel. So I'm going 8-9 on it. So I'm very curious to see how close we are if you're in the ballpark. But to me, very original film in this franchise is I have to praise it pretty good. It's so good. So
Very,
I'll let
very
you have
well
the
said.
floor.
Very well said. And like every franchise, you're gonna have highs and lows. This
Yep.
this one definitely has some lows, but god damn, this movie is the high point, and everything about it you can't help but love. I love the isolation. I love the backwoods subgenre in general. I think it's a fun subgenre to delve into. This one is the epitome of that subgenre. It is the one of the best of it, and it's the first of its kind, really. The idea of Leatherface taking somebody's skin and using it as a mask is just so disturbing. That was the first thing when I was introduced to this franchise that I just thought was so goddamn eerie. The thought of it just sends chills down your spine, man. The characters are fun. The dialogue between them and the van is exceptionally done. It's just kind of a nice slow pacing, but it's building up perfectly for the kills that are going to come later. You get to know these characters a little bit. Obviously, you have a little bit of 70s movie foolishness. These characters make some dumb decisions, but they don't know what they're getting into. Maybe I
Right.
would do that. I would hope not, but the kills are so shocking and just happen just like that. They're so quick that it really is a shock to the system as an audience member. They're really, really effective. The overall shots, the extreme long, wide shots that we have of the sunset, the shots of the moon, it gives you an idea of where you're at and how isolated you really are at this place. You feel just as desperate as the characters. A lot of kind of funny moments too that surprised me. I was laughing at a few moments. Just the characters are likable, they're funny, and it makes the kills that much more satisfying. And then when you have the twists at the end with the old man at the gas station and with the hitchhiker all being in on this ship for years, it just adds to the legacy of Leatherface. It really goes to show just how far they've gone and just how deep this goes. So for me, I can't help but go with an 8.5. I got to go an 8.5.
Oh,
Is
okay.
it in 9 territory for me? No, but an 8.5 is
Yep.
definitely where I'm going. I can't
Yep.
go below an 8 for a movie like this. It's so iconic, so many great moments that are really memorable for a horror fan. I really recommend it to anybody that hasn't watched it yet because like I said earlier, in the intro shots, I'm already bought in. I'm like, this is going to be a freaking great film. And obviously, the second half was a little bit slower, but I still enjoy some of that. But the first half, especially,
Hmm.
everything building up to Kirk and Pam's death is exceptional, exquisitely done.
Well said, Junes. Point four difference ain't too bad. So
Yeah.
that's awesome. So, and to me, like you kind of explained your score, to me, above a 9, I don't think it deserves it, but hell, I'm giving it an 8-9. So it's right there. Like, it's so good. Again, yes, I would recommend it, but and there you have it. Those are our scores. Again, 89 critic from Rotten Tomatoes and 82 audience. So we're right there. I mean, I think everyone that watches this or is a horror fan is going to be right there as well.
Yes. I think for
So,
sure. Some people maybe not, but I think the majority would be between that 8 and 9 range.
yeah.
This is a fun one to talk about. I'm glad we got to it. I said to you earlier, Money, I was like, by episode 30, I would be shocked if we don't talk about the Texas Chainsaw
Right?
Massacre. And here we are. I'm very, very happy that we were able to get to it. and share our experience with listeners. It's a fun experience to watch something like this. So it's going to make me want to watch some of the other films for sure. I know I've seen a few of the other bits and pieces from the other films, but it's definitely getting me to want to invest a little more into the franchise.
I think you'd like the storyline behind it. You meet more family members. The storyline gets pretty good, I think, in my opinion. So, but with that, it's been a fun episode, dude. I'm again, yes, glad we covered this franchise and have dived into it. So, do not forget. Again, thank you, audience members, to check us out here on YouTube. You can see our live reactions, our dialogue, full length episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, as well as on TikTok at Scratching the Surface 100. So, Junes, it's always been a pleasure, man. Nothing better than talking some horror with you on a weekend here.
We're on a horror movie conquest. We're sharing that love, money, and it's the love of my life. As I've said before, I'm looking forward to many more episodes to come.
And with that, we've been scratching the surface. Thanks, guys.